Going. Welcome everyone to today's webinar on how to choose the right cloud storage for your law firm. Our event sponsor for today is Uptime Legal. My name is Andrew Cabasso, and I'll be hosting this webinar, and I am the Managing Director of the JurisPage division over here at Uptime Legal. And joining us today is Dennis Dimka, the CEO of Uptime Legal, and today he's going to be talking about how to choose the right cloud storage for your law firm. There are a lot of different options out there, and we'll be going through all of those. If you have any questions at all during this webinar, please feel free to ask them in the question section on the question sidebar in the GoToWebinar screen. As you have them, please feel free to ask any questions. We'll also have some polls during this webinar, so it's going to be a bit interactive. We're excited for this, and I think let's just kick it off. Dennis, thanks for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks for that introduction. And thank all of you for joining. As Andrew mentioned, it's going to be an awesome, exciting webinar today, talking about how to choose the right cloud storage for your law firm. Quick introduction, although Andrew already did it, a little bit about me. Of course, I'm Dennis Dimka. I am the CEO of Uptime Legal Systems. My background is in general in technology and IT. And I spend a lot of time these days advising law firms on a variety of subjects, ranging from legal technology in general to legal software, document and email management, law firm productivity, marketing, and in general, growing and managing your law firm. And of course, what we're going to be covering today is how to choose the right cloud storage for your law firm. And this isn't an official agenda, but what you'll learn along the way, some bullet points, include some of the why. In other words, why one should consider cloud storage in general. What are the benefits? The different types of cloud storage services is a key area we're going to cover today because there are some distinct types. How to determine the best type for your law firm. We'll talk a little bit about security and compliance and how that plays an important role in selecting and using cloud storage. And at the end, I'll cover a little bit of further reading. If this intrigues you and you want to learn more, we've definitely got lots of great content on this subject. And I'll wrap it up with some Q&A at the end. And as Andrew mentioned, you don't have to hold your questions until the very end as I'm covering different areas. If you have questions, if you want clarification, please do type your questions right into the sidebar while I'm talking through it, and we'll get to them at the end. So as Andrew mentioned, we like to make these as interactive as possible. We like to kind of read the room. So before we get started, I'd love to get a pulse on all of you guys. So for our first poll question, I'll ask, where do you currently store your law firm data? And by that, I'm not referring to your practice management data. I'm referring to your files and your folders. Where does your law firm store its data?
All right, so the poll is now open, and feel free to respond. If you see in your GoToWebinar screen, you'll see the poll is open, and the question is, where does your law firm store its data? On an on-premise file server / network drive, on a network-attached storage device, in a basic cloud storage such as Dropbox or Google Drive, in a cloud-based document management system, or that's a good question. Let me get back to you on that. The poll is now open, so if you would please share a response, and then once everyone has submitted, we'll see where we're at, and then we'll keep moving.
I talked to a lot of law firms, and I don't want to say I see an even mix between these 4 or 5 answers, but kind of. So I'm very curious to hear what people are using today that have joined at least today's webinar.
All right. And I think we'll wrap it up now. The winner, by a good sizable margin, is on an on-premise file server / network drive with 56%, followed in second place by basic cloud storage, followed by DMS, followed by, good question.
Interesting. On-premise file server is clearly the winner. So good to know. I will talk about versus an on-premise file server a little bit in today's webinar.
All right.
That said, introduction, why cloud storage? Before I get into the kind of the hows and the whats, I always like to start with why. Why cloud storage? So years ago, it used to be a law firm that stored its documents or data in the cloud was considered pretty cutting edge. That was the case for a fair amount of time. But it is 2019 now, so today that's just not the case. Being in the cloud in one capacity is really no longer cutting edge. I'd say it's considered mainstream. I might even say it's more of a best practice. So why is that? The reason that cloud storage is a best practice is what I'll talk about a little bit first here, and really why are so many law firms moving to cloud-based systems in general and cloud-based storage specifically. And to be clear, I will talk about, in my webinar today, we'll talk about and we'll focus on cloud storage exclusively, meaning, again, your files and your folders, not cloud-based case management or cloud-based billing or accounting. I'll touch on those as they relate to cloud storage, which they do a little bit, but my focus today will be cloud storage, of course. So why? Why is cloud storage generally better than storing files on an on-site server, an on-premise server? And academically, big picture, I could certainly spend a long time talking about just that alone. But for our purposes for this discussion, I'll try to distill that to 6 core main real-world reasons why, in general, cloud storage is better than an on-premise file server or file storage. 6 reasons. So the first is security. In general, and quick disclaimer, I'm going to be saying in general a lot because a lot of these statements are generalizations, but they generally ring true. In general, cloud service providers and data centers have a lot higher security than a typical law firm would with a server sitting where they tend to sit, which is in a coat closet, in a copy room, or perhaps in a small server room. Because a data center or a cloud provider is in the business of building and managing secure networks and keeping them secure. That's their primary core competency, right? That's their job, like yours is practicing law. And most cloud data centers meet numerous security standards. And behind those standards, what they really have is systems and people monitoring security around the clock. 2 is reliability, meaning is your data going to disappear? Is it going to be offline? Is it going to be unavailable? And in general, a cloud platform will be worlds more reliable than any on-premise server. And consider that, right? If you have an on-premise server now, or if you've had one in the past, think about that server. It's, again, sitting in a copy room, perhaps somewhere. Maybe you have a really capable IT firm monitoring that server. And maybe you're really on top of your game and you have an IT firm that monitors it remotely all the time and comes on site routinely, maybe once a month to keep things up and running. And that's good. And if you have an on-premise server, you should absolutely do that. But that still doesn't compare to a data center that is professionally managing and monitoring and maintaining those servers. Data centers and cloud providers of different flavors tend to also have redundant servers, redundant data center buildings, multiple backups, built-in disaster recovery, and again, they're monitoring the stuff 24/7. And all that translates to really very little risk of losing data and minimal or no downtime. And there's just no comparison. Another big reason is mobility, and it's an obvious one. When a law firm stores its data in the cloud, in a basic cloud storage service or something more sophisticated, they can generally access it anywhere. They can be in the office, they can be in any one of their offices if they have multiple. Law firms can access their documents and files from home, from a client site, from the courthouse, you name it. And similarly, another big reason or case for cloud storage in general is accessibility. And by that, I mean being able to access your files and folders from any device. And most cloud storage solutions are accessible from Windows PCs, from Macs, from Android devices, iPhones and iPads, Chromebooks, generally everything. And, I see a lot of law firms that are mixed use, meaning some Macs, some PCs. But even if you're all entirely a Windows shop, which many law firms are, you probably have iPhones. You may have home users that would like to catch up on work from home, and they may have Macs, or they may use Chromebooks, you name it. So accessibility becomes more and more important. 5 is scalability. On-premise servers will eventually run out of resources, usually that space. And upgrading that space on an on-premise server costs time and it costs money. Or when you buy it, you overshoot so much that, maybe in terms of space, that you often are buying more than you need. And compare that to cloud storage, on the other hand, which is infinitely scalable. You can add resources like space as you need it, and typically only pay for what you need. And six, my final reason for, again, the case for cloud storage in general is economics. In general, cloud storage is more cost effective than on-premise servers, especially when you consider the total cost of ownership of on-premise servers. Because you might be able to argue, hey, Dennis, I can buy a server for $6,000 or $15,000 or something like that, and over 3 or 5 years, I might save money. And that might be true, but the real cost of servers is well beyond that. In fact, buying the server is typically the least expensive part of the whole equation. Because if you're doing things right, and hopefully you are, you have to not only buy the servers, but you have to maintain them, you have to upgrade them, sometimes you have to repair them, and all of that adds a lot of typically outside IT costs. So your total cost of ownership is generally much higher. So that's kind of the why cloud storage. Hopefully there was already some buy-in or desire to look at cloud storage, and that's why you joined the webinar in the first place, but I wanted to cover it. The main benefits of moving to cloud-based storage. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit about the different types of cloud storage. And there are lots of different cloud storage solutions and products out there, right? You've got consumer-grade systems, business-grade solutions, you've got standalone, you've got integrated, and by integrated I mean built into other software, which I will talk about. You've got simple cloud storage solutions and sophisticated cloud storage solutions. Lots of different things, lots of different options and nuances. So all of those different options, while different, can generally be lumped into two main categories of cloud storage in general. And those categories are what I'll call simple cloud storage and smart cloud storage. Now, those are not official terms. Those are not industry terms. They're just a description I'm coining right now that I'm going to use throughout my webinar because I think it's a good way to really understand the two big categories. And despite those labels, I wouldn't say that one is better than the other. I won't say that smart is better than simple necessarily, any more than saying, a truck is better than a car. Using that example or that analogy, it really just comes down to what the specific needs of your law firm is. And my goal today is to give you all of the intel you need to know which of those two categories you need. So, simple and smart cloud storage. Let's start with simple. So simple cloud storage, as I've defined it, is just that: basic, inexpensive cloud storage for businesses and individuals. And these are going to be the products that you probably already know and you may even use today. Services like Dropbox, Google Drive, OneDrive, ShareFile, and Box. Just to name a few. There are a lot more, but those are kind of the main brands, if you will. And within that group, some of them are a little more consumer-oriented, like, and I'm going to generalize here, like Dropbox and Google Drive. They may not agree with that characterization, but I think it's fair to say that they're a little more consumer-oriented. And others are a little bit more business-focused, a little bit more of a lean towards business application, like OneDrive and ShareFile. And they're all different, right? They all have interesting nuances and features, and one might have a slight advantage over another in a certain area. But if you zoom out at 100,000 feet, each of these are very similar in that the way they work is you create folders and you put stuff in the folders. And that's it, more or less. And I am definitely oversimplifying it, but in general, that is the gist of what they do. You make folders and you put files in those folders, and you can access those folders. That's simple cloud storage. And how they work in a nutshell, kind of from soup to nut in general, is you create an account with any one of these services, either a business or a personal account. Within there, it usually starts as more or less a blank screen or a blank slate. So you create folders. You make maybe subfolders under those folders or any structure or hierarchy of folders that you like, and you store files in them. And then you can access those files from generally anywhere. So it's fair to say, for those of you that are using an on-premise server, if you have a G drive or an S drive, meaning a central share or network drive on your server that your entire firm can access, These services are essentially a cloud-based counterpart to your G drive or your S drive. And how they work, how they actually do that, is they're all, again, a little different, but in general, they typically create a drive, quote unquote, a virtual drive that shows up on your computer. For instance, the Google Drive, right? And that's why it's named that. And it looks and works like a regular hard drive or network drive on your computer. It looks like just like another C drive or a G drive, but it is, of course, a cloud drive. And what it does and can do is it can sync multiple computers together. So if you're a law firm of 4 users, 4 people, and you have 4 desktops, it essentially is synchronizing that same set of data across all 4 computers, but it looks like it's one single drive. And most of these simple cloud storage solutions let you access your files that way, via that drive, or via a web browser, where you actually log in via a web browser, there's your folders, you access files that way, or both. And they do have other features. A lot of them include some mechanism for sharing individual files or even entire folders with other people, with outside parties. But that's kind of what they do. That's how they work. That's what they do. They're simple, and I mean that in a good way, right? They just kind of work. Now, all of these examples that I'm showing here are what I'll call standalone cloud storage services, meaning that's what they do, and that's really all they do, and that's all they're meant to do. The other type of simple cloud storage is what I'll refer to as integrated cloud storage, meaning integrated into other software. And in this case, I do mean integrated into your practice management software. So most cloud-based or web-based legal practice management software comes with some form of inline integrated cloud storage. And to take a bit of a step back very briefly, practice management software tends to come in its own 2 categories. On-premise, which means you either run it on an on-premise server or you run it in a private cloud, or cloud-based or web-based. And the applications you see listed here are the latter. These are natively cloud-based practice management applications with their own built-in storage, which means you can store files and documents inside your practice management software. And just a few of the apps that have that functionality include what you see here: Clio, Rocket Matter, Cosmolex, MyCase, Practice Panther. There are definitely more, but here are 5 fairly popular ones. So you can think of this cloud storage that's built into these as a sort of limited version of Dropbox inside your practice management software. And I'm picking Dropbox sort of arbitrarily, but you can sort of think of it as a Google Drive in your Rocket Matter or a Dropbox in your Clio. And the benefit of that, of course, is that you can store all of your documents for this Smith Matter in the Smith Matter in your software. Otherwise, or the alternative would be if you use, I'll just pick one, MyCase. If you use MyCase and you use OneDrive for your cloud storage, well, you have to have a Smith Matter folder in MyCase and a Smith Matter folder in OneDrive. That's the upside. The drawback is that most of these inline or integrated cloud storage services built into the applications do less, right? They have a little less functionality than standalone cloud storage. And that's by design. I'm not picking on them. They weren't looking to recreate or reinvent Dropbox. They were just looking to give you, the user, some basic way to store things inside the software. And to qualify that, when I say they do less, there's a lot of little things I could point to, but just for a couple of examples, for instance, you typically can't sync your cloud storage from your case management software to your local computer. There's no virtual drive in most cases. There may or may not be a mechanism to share files with outside parties, things like that. And again, not necessarily a bad thing. The pro of that might outweigh the drawback for you. So that said, I think it's a good time for our next poll question. And the question is, does your firm currently use one of these simple cloud storage services?
All right, and the poll is now open. Question is, does your firm currently use one of these simple cloud storage services? Options are no, yes, a standalone cloud storage service, or yes, cloud storage within my legal practice management software.
Simple cloud storage services is a very unintentional alliteration, and I'm finding myself having just a tiny bit of difficulty saying it again and again.
I mean, that's on you. You're the one who chose the phrase simple cloud storage services.
I did.
Ugh.
It does not roll off the tongue, but I think it's accurate, but it doesn't roll off the tongue.
All right, and I think that'll do it for now. Thank you everyone for answering that poll question and the response we've got. Yes, a standalone cloud storage service slightly edges out no, 55 to 40%, and then 5% are using cloud storage within legal practice management software.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is interesting. So that said, that's simple cloud storage, right? My unintentional alliteration. So next, let's talk about what I'm calling smart cloud storage. So what I've sort of defined here as smart cloud storage is, in short, a cloud-based document management system, or DMS. And what a cloud-based DMS is, in a nutshell, is secure cloud storage plus tools to manage your files and folders. So really, that means it's a combination of both cloud storage, like simple cloud storage, with software on top of it or built into it to help you manage your documents. And I will clarify and quantify what I mean by manage. And the notion of document management software is not new. It's actually been around for decades. Historically, law firms, usually larger ones, because of the kind of cost of entry, historically law firms would buy and run document management software on their on-premise servers, which almost always required expensive servers, more server horsepower than a law firm would otherwise likely have, and usually specialized consultants to implement and support that document management software. And for a lot of law firms, that was worthwhile, even despite all that, but it required a lot. Today, we have cloud-based document management software, which really combines the functions and features of traditional document management software, which I will talk about in a minute, with the cloud, making what I'm calling smart storage. Examples of cloud-based document management systems include SharePoint, which is a Microsoft product, our own LegalWorks, and NetDocuments. There are others, but those are probably three of the most popular ones used by law firms. So to qualify all of this, what I'm saying, I'll explain what exactly document management systems do and what makes them different from simple cloud storage. And really, when I'm done with my description here, I expect that you will be able to very clearly say which you need. Do you need simple or do you need smart? So to make that distinction, I really need to get into what a document management system does. And first, a DMS provides structure to how your firm organizes client and matter files and documents, whereas simple cloud storage, or even your own on-premise file server, really leaves you to your own devices when it comes to making a structure and sticking to it. Sticking to it maybe being more important. So smart cloud storage, again, a document management system, provides and enforces the structure for you. And hopefully it finds the right balance between providing some structure without tying your hands. And the reason that's a very useful thing for many law firms, especially once you grow past that 3 or 4 user size, is that if you don't have one and you're trying to make your own structure using just folders, no matter how meticulous and how well organized and how thoughtful you are when you first create that file system, inevitably over time, people won't follow it, or they won't follow it every time. And over time, it becomes sort of a wild west of folders. And what I see real world many times is the folder structure that started good becomes an incomprehensible mess over time. So to solve that, good law firm-centric document management systems keep everything organized, for starters, by matter or by client. And you can see that here in the screen capture of our own document management system, LegalWorks. You'll see a list of matters in the system. And by and large, every file or folder or collection of files must go into a client file or a matter file, right? So right off the bat, a simple but practical structure for organizing files and folders. Another key tenet of document management systems, or smart storage, is the ability to tag and profile documents. And that is, those are a bit buzzwordy, those two terms, but really what that means is being able to add classifications or labels to your documents. For example, you might want to classify every court order that you have in your system as an order, or every affidavit as that, as an affidavit, or motions as motions, and so on. So that later you can see all of the motions, maybe in a particular matter, or maybe all motions in your entire database if you want to see every motion that you've ever drafted or that you've ever received. And document management systems typically let you classify document types like that, like, again, motion or contract, as well as document statuses. So for instance, you might want to create and define document statuses for the way your law firm's workflow goes, such as draft, or this document is under review, or it's final, so on and so forth. And the better DMSs, in our view, let you create your own tags and apply them to documents as well. So in addition to being able to define types and statuses, for instance, you might want to create a tag called filed, meaning you filed that document with the courts, or archive, or really anything you can imagine. A tag that you can apply to any document in the system, and then again say, show me all the documents I've tagged in this matter as filed, or what have you. And these kinds of tags and statuses and profiles are really all aimed at helping you find what you're looking for, keeping relevant information sort of front and center. And all of that is beyond what basic cloud storage does for you, and beyond what an on-premise file server will do for you. Another important function of most DMSs is index and search. Now, if you use any of the simple cloud storages like Dropbox, Google Drive, all of those, again, they usually have some basic rudimentary search, but they're usually mostly restricted to searching by file name only, meaning you can search for a file by its name, but that's about it, more or less. Whereas a DMS, on the other hand, is much more robust. It will typically index every page of every document in every folder in every matter across your entire system so that you can search for and find what you're looking for. So for example, you may want to search for a specific name of a person. Maybe you're doing a conflict check. Or maybe you want to search for a very specific phrase. Maybe you're doing some sort of internal case law research. And with proper index and search, you'll find it, right? That phrase or that name that you're looking for, it could be completely buried, right? It could be on page 300 of a Word doc that's buried 4 folders deep in some matter, some obscure old matter, and the system will find it. And that is a key difference between simple cloud storage and smart storage, or again, a DMS. For a lot of law firms I talked to, search was the only, or certainly the primary reason they decided to move to a document management system. Similarly, OCR is another important function of a DMS, and definitely not included in simple cloud storage. And OCR software, if you're not familiar, will essentially convert a scanned document, which by default is nothing more than an image, to a text-enabled document. Meaning, when you scan a document by default, it's really nothing more than a photograph of that document. And a photograph has no text in it by definition. So OCR software will essentially read the image, convert it to text so that it can be indexed and searched. And if a document is stored in your system, whatever that system is today, and it's not OCR'd, that means there's no text in it, which means it won't be indexed, which means the contents of that document will never show up in a search. And OCR software can be applied in different ways. You can get it built into your scanner. You can get standalone software that does OCR, and it's sometimes built into document management software itself, so that as you're storing and putting documents and filing them, they're automatically OCR'd, which is very useful for documents both that you are scanning in your firm internally, as well as documents that other people outside of your firm are scanning and sending to you, and they may not be OCRing them. Version management is another key common feature of document management software in general. And attorneys especially deal with multiple versions of a document, right? That could be versions of a contract that's being negotiated. There's some back and forth, so there's iterations. Or it could be versions of a complaint that you're drafting, and you make versions as you go. And without the proper tools, a lot of lawyers I see do this very manually, right? So they're working on a document, they want to make a new version, so they do a save as, and they name the document -v2 or -v3, that sort of thing. And the problem with that, of course, is that doing that is messy. It's very manual and laborious, and it's prone to error. And it's not always clear just by those names which version has what you want, who did what, to which document, that sort of thing. So with most document management systems, and they all do version management a little different, but in general, each time you edit or change a document, a new version is created after each edit behind the scenes, or in some cases with some software when you tell the software to make a new version. And it's all behind the scenes, right? So when you're looking at a folder in your software, you'll see a single document, even if it has 10 versions, because it is a single document. But you can usually go into some sort of version history screen, kind of like the example here from our own LegalWorks, and you can see each version over time. And in general, you'll see the date of that version, what the number of that version is, who made it, and potentially any comments about that version. Another important feature that a DMS provides that generally Simple Cloud Storage does not is direct integration with Microsoft Office. Because for most law firms, Microsoft Office and Adobe represents at least 70%, if not 99%, of the documents that they work on. The difference there being probably WordPerfect. But in any case, it's useful, if not outright vital, to be able to quickly and easily save a Word doc, for instance, directly to your DMS and directly to the matter where you mean for it to go. And you can see that in this example, using our own LegalWorks again. Most document management software integrate with, say, Word, and they'll put a button right in your Word ribbon where you can hit Save to My DMS, and then it'll either save it directly to your DMS or it'll prompt you and allow you to say, which matter you want it to go to. And in the case of most document management systems, including our own, as you can see here, as you're doing that, you can also give it those tags and profiles that I was talking about a moment ago. You can give it a type, you can give it a status, and you can apply any tags that you might want. And the idea of that is to remove friction between saving a document, working on a document, and saving it into your document management, and to really make that a fluid process. And another big difference between Simple Cloud Storage and a true document management system is email management. And email management is a fairly broad term, but for most document management software, it means saving emails to a matter like any other document, because isn't an email just another type of document? And most document applications, they all do that a little differently, as I said about other things. But in our own software, by way of example, what we do is we give you a sidebar in your Outlook, and you can see that here. And that sidebar shows you your current open matters and allows end users to drag and drop one or multiple emails right to a matter to save it. And other software applications do it differently. In some cases, you have to double-click the email to open it, and then you'll see a Save It to My DMS button. But the idea is the same. The goal is having the ability to integrate directly with Outlook and save emails to a matter. And what I've seen law firms do that don't have a proper document and email management system is they'll take an email that's material or relevant to a case, they'll open it, they'll print it to or save it to a PDF, and then they'll manually move that PDF to their matter folder, wherever that is. And that's better than nothing, and good for you for being diligent, but that's an awfully slow, kind of clumsy way to save emails to a matter, in our view. So those are probably some of the most important elements of a document management system. There are definitely more features that typical document management systems have, things like check-in and check-out, document IDs, audit trails, and I could certainly spend the rest of this session talking about all the benefits and functions of a document management system, but I think you guys get the idea. And really what I'm trying to do is clearly demonstrate the difference between, again, that simple cloud storage and smart cloud storage. or a document management system with tools to manage documents. And as I said in the very beginning, I will not say that smart cloud storage is inherently better than simple. It really comes down to what your firm needs. And you can use this simple side-by-side comparison chart in my screen here to answer that question for yourself. Does your firm simply need a basic cloud-based file and folder structure and access via a web browser and a virtual drive and nothing more? If so, simple cloud storage is likely all you need. And you can do that via, again, a standalone service, or you can use the cloud storage built into your practice management software if you have it. Or do you need more sophisticated tools like the ones we just talked about? Do you need matter-centric organization? Do you need Office integration? Do you need that robust index and search and OCR and tagging and version management? If so, or if you need some of those, then you probably do need smart storage or document management software. Now, a lot of the clients I work with, law firms, they currently use, as do some of you, a simple cloud storage system now, because their first goal was just to get off of their on-premise server, and they accomplished that. And they'll ask me, and I'm often asked, Dennis, when do I need to upgrade or graduate to smart storage, to a true document management system? And the answer is, in short, you'll know, right? You'll feel the current system no longer meeting the needs. Things like, and these are just a few sort of anecdotal examples, dealing with sync problems that happens with some of the basic cloud storage once you try to expand it to more than a handful of computers, or dealing with some of those really limited search capabilities, or dealing with storing documents in one system and emails in another, or wishing you could tag or categorize a particular document as a pleading, or wishing you could say, show me all of my motions that we've ever filed or written. You know, when you find, or your team finds yourself wishing for those things, you're probably ready. Now, I want to have a quick sidebar, and I do want to talk a little bit about practice management software versus document management software. This tends to be a point of confusion, what I'm about to describe, and I think now is a great time to hopefully clarify that. So, as I mentioned at the very beginning, I and we here at Uptime Legal often play some level of an advisory role to our clients and help them select the right software to manage the different elements of their practice, or at least provide some high-level guidance. So a lot of times when I'm talking to a law firm, I might ask, okay, let's figure out what you're looking to do. Does your firm need practice management software or document management software, or do you need both? And sometimes the response we'll get is, what's the difference? Aren't practice management and document management software the same? And the answer is no, definitely not. These are two very different categories of software with two very different purposes, with some slight overlap between them. So I want to define and contrast the difference here because it is important. I've talked to a lot of law firms that have bought or almost bought one or the other, and that's really not what they wanted. So this is probably a bit of a review for a lot of you, but practice management software in general is and provides a client and contact database, case and matter database, provides some level of case-specific management, meaning managing the details of a family law matter versus a personal injury matter. Typically, practice management software includes time tracking and billing. Sometimes it includes accounting. It generally includes calendaring and sometimes includes docketing. And, as I mentioned now a few times, the cloud-based practice management applications usually include inline/integrated simple cloud storage. Now, sometimes the confusion is that, and where the confusion comes from is many practice management applications out there, when they're listing their features, like a list like this, like you see on my screen, on their website or in a brochure, or maybe even when they're talking through it in a sales meeting. They'll list all their features like this, including their inline integrated simple cloud storage, which does not roll off the tongue, but they won't call it that, right? Because that doesn't sound nice, doesn't sound good. So what do they call it? What does that bullet say on their website when they're listing their features? Well, they'll say document management. But based on everything you've learned today, we now know that that's not document management, it's simple cloud storage. So the problem is, when people see that, When they see, oh, it does case management and it does time tracking and it does document management, they take that at face value, understandably. And they often assume that their practice management software, therefore, comes with everything in the right column here, which it does not. And again, I don't mean to pick on them. For many law firms, that simple cloud storage that comes with their practice management software is all they need, right? And it's plenty adequate for them, which is just fine. But because some practice management applications use that term, document management, many law firms buy that software expecting the full DMS suite and are disappointed. Which is why some law firms, once they realize this, many law firms use practice management software, many law firms use document management software, and many law firms use both side by side. But it is important to understand the difference. So that is a great segue into our next poll question, which is, does your firm use a document management system? And our options are no, of course. Yes, I use an on-premise DMS, server-based, or yes, I use a cloud-based document management system.
All right, and the poll is now open. If you see on your screen, you should see the poll showing up. Does your firm use a document management system? The options are no, yes, on-premise, or yes, cloud-based document management. All right, the responses are still coming in, and once everyone's responded, we will shut down this poll, and we'll keep going. All right, and let's shut it down. The responses, what do we got? No is the winner at 63%, and very close for second are both of the yeses. Interesting.
Very interesting. Very interesting. A lot of law firms do use simple cloud storage. Some of them, it meets the needs, and that's great. Others, it's a little short, and hopefully that's what you guys are all learning today, is how to know which camp you belong to. So I want to talk just briefly about security and compliance because it's a really important issue. And in the beginning of my discussion here, I did say that in general, cloud storage is more secure than keeping data on premise. And that is generally true, but with an asterisk. And that asterisk is that you select the right or a good system and provider. So next, I'm going to spend just a couple of minutes walking you guys through some basic security measures or requirements that you should look for, whether you ultimately go with a simple cloud storage system or smart cloud storage. In either case, these are the basic measures that any cloud service should have in it. So you can really use this as a checklist. And we are providing this presentation as a PDF when we're done as a handout. So if you find this list or any of the other charts useful, you can definitely grab them. Use this as your checklist, whether you're looking at a Dropbox or a sophisticated document management system or anything in between. What you should have, and in the interest of time, I'll just kind of run down these briefly. What you should demand at a minimum is encryption in transit, meaning your data is encrypted as it moves throughout the internet. Encryption at rest, so your data being encrypted when it's being stored. Multi-factor authentication, or at least support for MFA if that's something you want or a regulator or a client wants. Geographic redundancy, so that your data is stored in multiple locations for safety, as well as redundant backups. You should also have a system that enforces password complexity, right? A basic but effective kind of low-hanging fruit when it comes to keeping your data secure. And whatever system you ultimately go with, that business ought to be performing 24/7 threat monitoring. And by threat, I mean hackers, viruses, ransomware, all that stuff. And I absolutely would not consider anything in this list Cadillac. Security breaches are very, very commonplace. They're in the headlines all the time. So I would say this is a minimum bar. And if you have all of this, and it's built into many cloud services, fortunately, automatically, you can really get a sense of why I say cloud storage is leaps and bounds more secure than an on-premise file server. And if the notion is, well, okay, yeah, my data is stored on-premise, but I'm not in the cloud, it's in my building where it's more safe and secure, that is not true. If you A, have a server, and B, have the internet, your server and your data is connected to the cloud. So we have covered a lot of ground today, and I will recap everything, what we learned today, in 9 bullet points. What did we learn today? 1, we learned that cloud storage in general is better than on-premise storage. 2, we learned that cloud storage comes in 2 broad categories, simple and smart. 3, we learned that simple cloud storage can be standalone, like Dropbox, or built into practice management software. 4, we learned that, in effect, the definition of simple cloud storage is A, you make folders, and B, you put things in them. 5, we learned that smart cloud storage is a document management system that is cloud-based. 6, we learned that really what a document management system is storage for your documents plus tools for you to manage them. 7, we learned that which of those is best for your firm depends on what specific functions your firm needs. 8, we also learned along the way that practice management software is not the same as document management software. And 9, we learned that security is crucial to storing your information in the cloud. And I hope that was helpful. Before I get into some further reading, which I'll share with you all, I'll ask one final poll question, and that is, would you like to talk to someone at Uptime about cloud storage or document management for your law firm?
All right, the poll is now open. After this poll, we'll do some Q&A. We have a lot of good questions in the queue. Question is, would you like to talk to someone at Uptime about cloud storage or document management solutions? If you have not yet, please respond to the poll that is open now, and then we will jump right in to some Q&A.
Before Q&A, I will ever so quickly go through some further reading because I think there's some good stuff if you do want to learn more on our website. And let me know when you're ready, Andrew, and I will quickly cover that.
All right, just getting any last minute responses. All right, so that's closed out. What do you got for further reading?
So for further reading, if you want to learn more, we've got some really great resources on our website. I'll share just a few I handpicked that I think if you find this interesting, you'll find these interesting. Number 1 is our cloud storage comparison chart. We do have a chart that shows each of these, some of the most popular smart and simple cloud storage with lists of features side by side, so you can do your own homework. I'd also recommend, if you do find yourself leaning towards the smart side of the fence, we have a similar chart that compares the leading document management systems side by side, both cloud-based and premise-based. And finally, I also recommend our document management white paper on matter centricity, how matter centricity is important when implementing a document management system, whatever that may be. All of those and a lot of other great resources are available at uptimelegal.com/library. Definitely recommend checking that out. If we don't get to your questions here next, or if you think of something later, you can always email me. My email address is here, and this will be in the handout. And that said, let's jump into some Q&A.
Well, one quick thing, someone asked, and I should have mentioned this earlier, was asked if we can get a printout of the PowerPoint slides. So one thing is that there are handouts attached to this presentation. If you look in the on your GoToWebinar windows, there should be a section for handouts that has a PDF copy of the slides, but we'll also make sure that we can get these included with a follow-up email if we can. Yeah, so be on the lookout for that. Tomorrow, we're going to follow up with an email that'll have the webinar recording, and I believe it should have the handout as well. So we got a bunch of questions. So let's start. One question is, can email management be synced with Gmail or only with Microsoft?
To my knowledge, every single document and email management application out there that has an email management component only works with Outlook. And I don't want to, I won't make a case for Outlook versus Gmail, but I will say most of the business community and the legal community uses Outlook, and I think that's where the software publishers focus their efforts, right, where the market is. That is the case with our own LegalWorks.
Next question is, can you upgrade from a simple storage to a DMS in one system, like upgrade later, I guess?
I'm not sure that I understand the question completely, but if it is, can one upgrade or move from simple to a DMS, the answer is yes. How you go about that varies from product to product. Some of the, probably many of the document management applications that are out there, they don't do that themselves. You'll be required to go find a consultant, maybe recommended by the software company, to do that for you. In the case of Uptime Legal and LegalWorks specifically, our team does that. So we often move our clients from Dropbox or from Google Drive to LegalWorks. But it's always possible regardless of the product you use.
And a related question that someone else asked was, based on this webinar, it appears that moving a cloud storage database with 100 documents a million documents or files from cloud storage to a DMS, it would involve like hundreds or thousands of hours of staff support. Is that true?
Great question. Depends on the product. So I showed you guys the profiling, right? That's where you define a document as a type. Some applications, and I won't mention them, but I will just say some document management software requires that every time. So you cannot put a document in the system without giving it a type or a tag or something like that. And I get the inclination to do that, I guess, but one of the things we do when we make software here at Uptime Legal is we want to make sure we're never getting in your way. So in the case of LegalWorks, which I can speak to more authoritatively, that is not required. It is optional, but it is not required. So what we typically do, to use that example, if we have a law firm coming to us with 1 million documents coming from a file server or Dropbox, we create the structure that's based on matters. We move the documents over, which day one doesn't have any tags or profiles. It doesn't have a type. And then the customer can, at their discretion and at their choosing, come back and tag and categorize documents to the degree that they want to. And a lot of times that means they'll do that only on a go-forward basis. Some will put in some time to backfill that, but it's completely up to them, and that's the way we think it ought to be.
All right. Next question is a bit security related. When you mentioned encryption in transit, does that mean a client would need a password to see their documents in the email?
No. So anything that is cloud-based or web-based is automatically going across the internet, right? So picture opening up a web browser, logging into your system, whatever it may be, and clicking and opening up a Word document. While it all happens very quickly, that document is going across the internet, right, for a split second. And the internet is a public place. So theoretically, anyone on the internet who is a hacker or just someone nefarious could intercept that, in theory, and read it. So for that reason, it's very important that any software you use, which most modern day applications do, encrypts that data while it's in transit. So if it is intercepted, even though it's only a theoretical possibility, it can't be read, right? Very, very important. The email thing you're referring to might be encrypted email, which is a separate thing, a separate subject, a different type of service, but also something that is a good idea to have.
As related to encryption, is there protection from third-party hacking on these DMS systems?
Naturally, that depends on the provider. I think any provider, whether you're a cloud software maker or a data center or anything like that, it depends on the provider, right? In other words, are they doing a good job? And I know that's not a very satisfying answer, but I think it absolutely should be part of a law firm's due diligence when they're evaluating providers. And in the case of some of the premise-based document management software, those companies, they just make the software, right? They don't host it. So they say, hey, look, you can either run this on your own server, in which case security is on you, or you can run it in a cloud provider's environment, like our own Uptime practice, in which case it's on them. And again, I would say you better do your homework because that is a serious concern. The good companies do it really well. Unfortunately, there are some smaller or more fly-by-night companies that don't.
Gotcha. Another question is, what are the costs related to simple cloud storage and DMS cloud storage?
Good question. As you might imagine, simple tends to be very inexpensive, and smart tends to cost more. I can't speak to other products, but because smart cloud storage is just doing so much more, right? It gives you tools for index and search and tagging and OCR. There's a lot more happening, which costs a lot more. Whereas simple cloud storage, as the name implies, is simple. I sometimes lovingly refer to it as dumb storage versus smart storage, but I thought that sounded disparaging, so I changed it to simple. But dumb storage or simple storage is cheap, right? Very, very cheap. For pricing on our own product, for instance, you can go to uptimelegalworks.com and click on pricing. Other companies that I've seen don't necessarily publish it, but I'm sure they'd be happy to give you pricing. But you will, in general, find smart cost more.
And another question, I know we're running short in time, and I want to be mindful of everyone's time here because I think after an hour legally we are a podcast, and there are FCC requirements for that. So I want to make sure we're out of here by 3 Eastern. So another question is, can a copy of your DMS cloud be saved to a local backup drive?
That is a feature that some document management systems have and some do not. And should be, but I would not automatically assume that everything you're looking at has it. In the case of LegalWorks, for instance, we have an option where you can synchronize some or the entirety of your DMS to a local storage device. The use case for that is really two. One, sometimes somebody might want to take a particular folder offline with them if they're going to be on a flight or a plane. The other use case is, hey, I would just sleep better at night knowing all of my data, a copy of it exists on premise where I can see it and touch it. So we provide that, as do others, but not everyone does. So it's certainly something that if that's important to you, you should ask as you're evaluating solutions.
Yep. Another question is, how good is iDrive in particular, if you're familiar with it?
iDrive falls into the category of simple cloud storage. I would say within that category, it is a lot less used by law firms. I won't say that's good or bad, and I actually don't know enough about it to give you any pros and cons, but I can say it is one of the lesser used of the simple cloud storage category. Again, Dropbox, Box, ShareFile, OneDrive, and Google Drive are probably more popular and maybe a little bit more battle-tested in that regard.
All right. Another question is, what happens if and when there's an electrical or internet blackout? I guess this might refer to either on the cloud side as well as the user end.
Yeah, so in general, any cloud-based service, whether we're talking about cloud storage or cloud-based case management or cloud-based accounting software, by definition requires internet connectivity. I think in today's day and age, internet access is so prevalent that it's just not really an issue. Like a lot of law firms I talk to, they have their main internet connection, and for the once a year that their internet goes out, they might all switch to the hotspots on their phones, or they might actually pay for a second backup internet connection. So I think that's how most law firms deal with that challenge. Beyond that, of course, in some cases, as I mentioned, you've got a local sync copy. And in the case of simple cloud storage, they are natively syncing, so you have offline access in that way.
Right. How does going with a smart DMS allow me to eliminate on-premise servers? Don't I still need an on-premise server for everything else?
It depends. You may. Most of the law firms that we talk to and work with, their goal is to, piece by piece, move entirely to the cloud and get rid of the on-premise servers, because that's the goal. That's why, in our case, that's why they maybe reached out to us in the first place. So suppose they have document management software, or suppose they have a G drive or an S drive, and they have some software for practice management. So we have to kind of look at each component on its own and have a game plan for each thing individually. For instance, perhaps we say, okay, we recommend you move your G drive to Dropbox, or we recommend you move your G drive to our cloud-based document management system. That just leaves your brand X case management system that we can move to a private cloud and host that via virtual desktop, such as our own Uptime practice. And then your email, maybe that's on site on your own Exchange server. We're going to move that to hosted Exchange. But you kind of have to look at it piece by piece so that when you're done, the goal being, again, everything's off of your server.
All right, and last question for today before we wrap this up. Are there separate costs for setup and then ongoing for these types of services?
Yes. In the case of, in every case there is, the only real question is who's doing it. As I mentioned, most of the document management, cloud-based document management providers, and even Google Drive, for instance, they don't do that work for you. Google doesn't have a team of people who you can hire by the hour to move your stuff for you and understand it. And most smart storage or document management systems similarly don't have a team internally that does that work. And they'll say, but they may have a network of consultants or that they can refer you to, or you may just have a consultant in your area that is for instance, a brand X document management consultant who can move it for you. Naturally, they are going to charge for that service, so that's something that they would quote you on. And in the case of Uptime Legal specifically, I think we're the exception in that we both provide and host that service, LegalWorks, as well as we'll do the onboarding, and we too charge a fee for that work.
All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today. But everyone, thank you for these really great questions. And thank you for joining us today for this webinar. And Dennis, thank you for joining us today to share these insights. And if anyone has any further questions, anything that comes to mind after this webinar in the next coming days, please feel free to reach out at dennis.dimka@uptimelegal.com and check out some of our materials at uptimelegal.com/library. Well, thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thanks everyone.